Good evening, members. It is absolutely on 7 o'clock, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The first one we've actually had in the chamber since the lockdowns, so good to be back in the chamber itself. If I can first of all give the webcasting notice. This meeting may be filmed for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site. At the start of the meeting, I am confirming that all or part of the meeting is being filmed. You should be aware that the Council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during this webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy, and copies made available to those who request it. Therefore, by entering the chamber and using the lower public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. We have no members of the public present, I don't believe, so I don't need to reference the public gallery area, but that is the webcasting notice. Apologies for absence.
I've received apologies from Councillors Bannott, Hadley, Matthews, Plummer and Lee, Chairman.
Thank you. And any substitute members?
I've got Councillor Heap substituting for Councillor Plummer.
Thank you. Then agenda item 4, the minutes of the last meeting. Obviously this was some time ago, it was on the 1st of July, so I'm asking members to confirm those minutes. Members happy to do so? Thank you. Any declarations of interest? None. And we have no public questions or requests to address the committee as I understand it.
None, Chairman.
Thank you. And we have no executive decision call-ins. So we can move on to agenda item 8, which is the corporate plan key action plan for year 4 2021-22, and it's the Q1 corporate performance reporting, which are on pages 17 to 34. And we have with us this evening Charlotte Graham, who I think is going to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just drawing your attention to the Q1 corporate performance reporting, with the report starting from page 19. Just a little bit of background information. This report has previously been presented and reviewed at Select Committee, so appreciate that it's been a while since Q1, in which this is now coming to overview and scrutiny. The report is split into 2 sections. The first section of the report is progress updates against specific projects, and the second section of the report is the quarterly KPI data. The report presents those projects that have been agreed through our governance process as requiring to report up to Select Committee and either have a RAG status of amber or red. Red and amber indicates that the project is likely to be at risk of missing a key milestone or has presented a key issue or that requires some resolution. The second area of the report is our KPI data, which reflects back on Q1. We are aware that there have been some instances in which the report deadline has been due prior to the data from KPIs being available to us. This has meant that there's been some gaps in some of the data when that has been presented to Select Committee. This has been updated since the last Select Committee, and we are working through governance arrangements to review how this can be better managed in the future. And we are committed to making sure that should we have that same scenario again, that the Project Management Office will refresh that data and reissue the report. The PMO have also dedicated some significant time and effort to start to embed some of our new governance structures and processes. This, we hope, will provide a greater level of detail, more scrutiny and better quality assurance in the future. And we're achieving that through a more effective reporting process and using the lessons learnt. We are also introducing more of a focus on the startup phase of projects, and our priority is looking at requirements gathering, budget control and resourcing. So referring back to the report, I'm going to go through page by page and open up if there's any specific questions. If I don't have the answers to those questions, I will take the action away to find out that information and come back to yourselves. And I am also aware that I have already received potential of 2 requests of information regarding the back office system and the community and cultural trust. In regards to the back office system, the resolution has been reached, but we are awaiting a further update on what that is and the impact of that. And in regards to the community and cultural trust, trustees are in place, but at the time I'm not aware of who those trustees are, but again I'll take that action away to find out that information. So on page 19, if anybody has any questions regarding the information there, I'm happy for those to be heard, or if not, I'll move forward.
Any members, any questions?
Okay.
Councillor Lyon?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the amber on page 20, the last point, it says that there's going to be an action plan to updated once registration has been confirmed. Are we going to see the action plan, or has it been documented anywhere?
On page 20. So the action plan has been targeted to be done in Q3. So we're not yet at that point of the action plan being drawn up, but I can find out whether that can be referred back into this forum.
So have we got one now rather than what's going to be changed in Q3?
I'm not sure. I'll have to take that back and find out.
Thank you.
It implies that the action plan it implies that there is one in place, I think, but it will then be updated once the registration with the Charities Commission has been completed. Councillor Murray?
Are we now on page 20? I didn't think we had got there, because I had
yes,
a question.
we are. Page 19 was just the...
yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so we are on page 20 now. Again, this came up at the... not the issue, but the principle came up at the Cabinet last night. Perhaps I'm missing things. And, you know, I'm getting older and I'm in a group of 1, so it's probably very easy to miss things. Following discussion, it was agreed to proceed with the establishment of the trust. Where did those discussions take place? Because I can't remember being at a committee meeting where those discussions took place. I'm obviously willing to be corrected, but has there ever been a formal decision that we're going down this route? Because it's news to me. As I say, I may well have missed it, and I apologise for being inadequate if I have. But where did these discussions take place?
I have to say that at the briefing meeting we had prior to this meeting, both Councillor Jennings and myself did raise questions around this as well. I'm looking at the fact that I believe this will come under Councillor Patel's portfolio, because it seems to be linked with the Epping Forest Museum. When I did do a bit of research myself and found that it had been set up previously under another name going back several years, and that it is only this year that it is going forward with the name that it is now before us this evening. Councillor Patel, do you have any information on this yourself?
Chairman, I'd need to get an update on that and come back to Councillor Murray.
Just to pursue it a little bit further then, my understanding is that this is a complete change of status. I mean, I'm not a legal expert in trusts and so on, even though I'm a trustee on various things like a number of us, or nearly all of us here, I would think. But this is a key change in status, I would have thought, in the delivery of this service. And that must be a formal decision of members, or at least a published portfolio decision that we have a chance to call in if we wish. I'm not necessarily saying that this is the wrong route to go. I don't have enough evidence for that judgment, but what I am saying is it appears to me that quite a strategic decision has been made about a service, and it hasn't been made in an open way. I'm not saying that's been done deliberately, though I'm quite willing to subscribe to a number of conspiracy theories as regards the FDC. But, you know, I'm quite willing to accept that it's been done in all honesty. But I hope members do understand that this is quite a fundamental change in the status and corporate governance of of this service, and it doesn't appear to have been done in a very transparent way. Even the portfolio holder is struggling to explain when and how the decision was made.
Certainly, the two questions that I had written on my paper were how were the directors appointed and who made those appointments, which I think is the same questions you are in fact asking as well, Councillor Murray. Have you got anything that you think, Councillor Patel?
No, I was just going to say that I believe this has been done in conjunction with the museum. So, but I will get some further information and come back to you on this.
So I think it is something that we do need to get something fed back. Councillor Rackham, you... Sorry, can you put your microphone on?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask that the portfolio holder come back to the whole committee and not just Councillor Murray, please, on that? Thank you.
I'm happy to do it via a members in the members' bulletin if you prefer, Chairman. Is that at your discretion?
I think probably it's something that we need answers sooner than perhaps the next meeting. And I know that Charlotte is taking it away as well as a question to find out a bit more about it. But unfortunately, the immediate officer responsible isn't available this evening, so she might well have had the answers to hand. On that, sorry, yes, you want to add something?
Okay. Any further questions from page 20 at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so if I move on to page 21, which leads with the Research and Feasibility Insights project, do I have any questions regarding any of the updates on page 21?
Councillor Lyons?
Thank you, Chairman. I was waiting to see if anybody else was going to put their hand up first, but the red items here, the first one, provide insight for the future design of our services based on data and behaviour analysis and provide customer-centric services. I think this is absolutely vital. If there is some issues in getting this resourced, then that may be the case, that it's deferred or delayed, but I don't think taking it out of view of overview and scrutiny is a good idea. So I would suggest that it is retained and we actually monitor the progress. And the same with the second one, member services. I did ask at Stronger Council if there was an analysis of the number of members' reports that have been received and how they were being dealt with, but I don't think that was available. But I would ask again if we could actually see the number of member reports that are going into the system and how quickly they're resolved, because this again is fundamental to the operation, certainly for members and the council.
Just looking at the first point there, and the recommendation is actually that there shouldn't be any reporting until the project actually starts again, so that it won't be a repetitive, that it hasn't started. Once it has started, I think we will hear something back from that one, I believe.
Absolutely. They're expecting that their work might commence in Q1 from next year, so from April next time, in which it would be replaced within this report to provide updates against.
Thank you. Councillor Kane, yes, it's your cabinet area.
Just wanted to chip in on the second point from Councillor Lyon, particularly about reporting on member queries and where the onus was and percentages, etc. That will only be possible once we've formalised and everybody's happy with and everybody is using the recommended forms for doing those applications. The ones that slip through the net are the ones where members go straight to a preferred officer and ask, can you do this? Could you get that done? Could you answer that? Those aren't being categorised, they aren't being enumerated, so we're missing those in terms of our overall statistics. So from me, a plea to try to adopt the member query forms and use them wherever appropriate. It's not always appropriate because sometimes we have issues that fall between two posts and we do need to just write to member inquiries and say, I'm not sure where this should go, and they will assist, of course, but wherever possible, if I can once again plead for the the forms to be used, because then we can start doing some proper analytics and make sure we've got resources in the right areas at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Charlotte, do you want to carry on through?
Yeah, sure. Is there any further questions from anything on page 21?
No.
No? Okay, if I move on to page 22, which leads with the back office system. Any questions at all? No? Okay. And then following on there on to page 23.
Councillor Murray?
Thank you, Chairman. I realise why it's written like that, so I'm not suggesting a change. But under the goal, it's talking about imagining Epping Forest District as a great location to live, work and do business. Let's just make it very clear tonight, Epping Forest is a great place to live, work and do business. We don't need to imagine it.
Thank you for that comment.
Noted. Any further questions on page 23?
Councillor Rackham.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about that we are at risk of missing milestones. Local shops, can I ask how we're targeting these local shops? How are we trying to encourage them to get involved in the scheme? And also on the newsletter being put on hold, why is this? Is it because we just haven't got enough local shops involved? And then back to my first question then, is what are we going to do about engaging local businesses to get involved in this scheme? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charlotte?
In regards to what are we doing about it, so the team are looking at the moment at developing a strategy about how they are going to improve the communications to businesses and hopefully improve the reach and the engagement. That piece of work is scheduled to be ready for Q3, so that's something that I would expect over the next few months. And I see no reason why that strategy couldn't be shared once it's been produced. I don't know if anybody about engagement from local businesses. Unfortunately, I'm not close enough to the project to know about how that piece of work is being managed. But I can take this back and speak to John Houston and ask for an update from him.
So thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions from page 23?
No. So we move on to the KPI.
Okay, so lovely. So if I move on to the KPIs, which starts from page 25, obviously appreciate that the data that we're referring back to is Q1, so it is slightly historic. That's due to the frequency of these meetings, but this data has been reviewed at Select Committee, and we have updated it since we've had any gaps. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of the KPI data?
Yeah. Just 2 points on the first statistic. If I've understood it correctly, that's excellent then. If 80% of our customers are satisfied compared to our target. Have I understood that correctly?
You have, and what we've done this round is actually to refer back to data that we had for the previous quarter as well, which we've put in the comments. So in the previous quarter to that, the actual was 74%, which has now risen to an actual of 80% in this quarter.
That's excellent, Chairman. I suppose it's night follows day, but I wish 80% of the people who contacted me were satisfied. 100% of the people who contact me aren't satisfied, but that's probably why they contact councillors, isn't it?
I think that probably is a comment we might all think about around. I did wonder on that one whether the target was actually too low.
I can't answer whether the target is too low or not. I can say that there has been some discussions around how we do a piece of work to review the KPIs that we have now and actually kind of future-proof some of those. So that is something we're looking at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. We got any other questions on page 25? Councillor Wixley.
Well, it's just a comment really on this 80% figure. I think that cropped up at the Community Select Committee, and I felt that 80% isn't really good enough. I mean, the target should be 100%. I appreciate that that's not always easy to reach, but what it means is we're saying it's tough luck on 20%, and I don't think that is actually good enough.
Yeah, again, that's a discussion that could come and lead on to quite a long discussion around that one. Have you got any other questions on that?
No, no further questions on any of the KPI information? I'll just see if that drills down. I think it goes over 2 pages. So I don't know if there's any questions around any of the KPI data on page 26.
No, not seeing anybody.
Where possible, one of the things that we started to do, and we've done it in this quarter, is actually, like I've mentioned before, to review the KPI data from the previous quarter so that we can start to build that picture up over time and include that as part of this report, so we can kind of start to see that journey rather than just a single figure for that particular quarter.
No comments or questions? Right.
No? And there's one, I think it's the final page, page 27.
Councillor Murray?
Just got a general question which I could have asked at any time, but now's as good as any. Are these targets generated by officers, or are they generated by portfolio holders, or are they generated in the kind of joint discussion? Because I would have thought that that's probably something that should be happening. Portfolio holders within their own area should have some involvement in the setting of targets, and there's an argument that it should be wider than that, but I don't think it should be just officer led. So it's just how do these targets emerge, or does it vary from service to service?
Can I go to the Cabinet members and ask if any of them are involved in the target setting? Councillor Kane?
Certainly in my service area, targets are evaluated from previous years and look at the historic evidence from the previous year, if it's moving up, if it's moving down, whether it needs reassessing. Sometimes it's just carried forward, sometimes it will be adjusted, but I will have a hand in those discussions before they're committed to.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread?
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, that's a sensible way of doing things, but in the past, historically, and I'm sure Councillor Murray will have remembered this when we used to have the old resources overview and scrutiny committee, that it would be members of, I should imagine now, stronger council would be looking at the performance indicators on a regular basis as a suite and making comments and recommendations on an annual basis. So I certainly, I'd recommend as scrutiny that should be a part of the process.
Probably something that we need to check whether it is still happening. Charlotte?
Yeah, just to add that. So it is some initial discussions we've had. I've been here 4 months. I'm still relatively new and wrapping my head around some of the process stuff. But myself, my team, and the area in which I sit in, it is some discussions we've started to have about how do we start to look at the KPI setting in the future. So hopefully we'll be able to come back with an update to everybody here with what those plans are.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And I think the last final page is page 28, where there's one further KPI on there, if anybody has any questions.
Sorry, when you're saying page 28, is that the one that's the engagement in community, physical and cultural activity?
It's total visits in person to Epping Forest District Museums.
All right, yes. So it's at the bottom, yeah.
That's one.
Anybody got any questions around that?
No?
Obviously, again, the figures are growing on that, and it's a good thing for the museum, and certainly it's publicising itself well on social media. So at a time when people are looking at things to do more locally, it's probably something that they have taken an opportunity to look at.
Yes.
Any questions? No?
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Right. Now, we have some more pages. Sorry.
Sorry, they do. There was a gap in the space. It made me think.
Sorry.
Apologies, my mistake. Page 29, any questions regarding the KPI data there?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody with anything on that one, so if we could move on to 30.
Yep. Page 30.
And these are all around the leisure centres and the activity. And again, they obviously, when the opportunity has been there for people to use them, they have been using them, and increasingly. So that is good as well.
If I move on to page 31.
So the bottom of page 30 and the top of page 31 is the recycling rate, which I'm assuming that Stronger Place have looked at that one, but again, we're just below the target, but fractionally, so I think that's
tiny, yes.
Yes.
Just tiny. And there is some work underway to look at how that can be improved. So they are looking at developing some initiatives and awareness on reuse and recycling.
Councillor Murray?
It might just be worth making a couple of points. I hope this has been other members' experience in their wards, but this has been a terrific frontline service that has kept going under all the pressure for the last 2 years. So I think that's just worth stating again. I mean, I know it's stating the obvious, but it is very much the frontline service. And it's worth just sharing something that the one of the cabinet members, because the relevant portfolio holder wasn't able to attend yesterday. I think it was Councillor Phillip that updated me, because he was on the management board for this contract. Biffa at the moment are happy that they're retaining their drivers, but at the depot, their drivers are being met face to face by private employers offering them £1,000 there and then to join them. So there's fierce competition for bin drivers to go and drive lorries, presumably, and so on. But at the moment, Biffa are confident that they've got their workforce and that they're keeping them. But they're under a lot of, someone offers you £1,000 to just go down the road. It's very tempting.
Yes, I think that's called poaching. Any other comment? Again, the reduction in household waste, obviously we are in a different situation at the moment with more people working at home, and it would have affected the amount of household waste that was being put out each fortnight. Anything else on page 31?
No? Any comments on page 32?
Around planning applications, which again seem to be hitting the target at the moment.
Okay.
Nothing on that one. If go on to page. Sorry, Councillor Murray.
On 32, I highlighted it, and I want to phrase this carefully, because I absolutely. So I'm talking about the line that says current figures are that staff are increasingly withholding their ethnicity information. I completely understand their right to do that, and I wouldn't want to weaken that in any sense. But I do find that disappointing, and I obviously can't second guess their reasons, but it does seem to me perhaps it's not been explained well enough for why that information is asked. It's fairly standard information. It's pretty clear in most big employers the rationale behind asking that information, and that, I just found that a little disappointing. But obviously they do have the right to do that. Perhaps we just need to re-look at, have we explained recently as an employer why that's a reasonable question to ask in an anonymous way, because I just was a little bit disappointed to read that.
And I can take that feedback back to the people team.
Thank you.
Any further questions on page 32? Okay, any questions about KPI data on page 33?
No comments?
No?
I
And this time I've got it right, that is the end of the KPI reporting. Thank you. And if there's anything else that comes up following this meeting, I'm more than happy to receive those by emails and come back with a response.
Thank you very much. And you've got those few items where you have got something to bring back.
I do, thank you.
Yeah, but thank you very much for this report and for presenting it this evening.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you. And you are welcome to stay, but if you wish to leave the meeting, you equally do. So if we move on to agenda item 9, which is on page 35, the climate change and sustainable transport update. We've got 2 officers joining us on Zoom for this. Stephen Lloyd-Jones and Fran Edmonds, and obviously Nick Dorr is in the meeting itself, also able to answer any questions around it. But if I can go first now, I think Fran was going to take us through a bit of it first, so if I can pass over to
Yes,
Fran.
yeah, that's right. Thank you. So just first of all, just check that you can hear me all right in the room.
Certainly I can. I think, yes, others can.
Great. So this report is for the committee to consider progress on the climate change and sustainable travel activities. I'll talk a bit about the climate change part of this, and then Stephen will talk about sustainable travel. So following the declaration of a climate emergency and the pledge to do everything within our power to become a carbon neutral district by 2030, a climate change action plan has been developed to take these declarations forward. An update on the action plan and progress made on actions within the plan are contained in the report. We'll go through the main elements of the report now and then take any questions. So firstly, the report mentions the climate change action plan is due to go for consultation in October to November. The consultation actually launched today and will run until the 26th of November. Comments will be received through online questionnaires as well as events to allow for further discussion of the document. To give context to the consultation and also to raise awareness of climate change, air pollution and what we can all do to help, climate change web pages have been published. They contain ideas to reduce emissions for residents, businesses, schools and communities as well. To raise awareness of the climate emergency internally, carbon literacy training is being undertaken by staff. The training gives staff the tools to make organisation-based carbon pledges that they can then implement within their roles. The initial pilot session received good feedback, with further sessions expected to take place from November. The report also highlights tree planting activities, where 65,000 in grant funding has been awarded for tree planting at Jessel Green. The proposal is to plant approximately 2,300 trees, and this aims to provide benefits such as increased biodiversity and carbon storage for the climate part of it, as well as enhancing the local environment for residents and providing air quality and flood protection. Finally, from me, the report gives an update on the Green Homes Grant Delivery Scheme that aims to improve the energy efficiency of low-income households. The council part of a successful consortium bid with Essex County Council for phase 1 of the scheme. A correction to the report from the most recent figures we've received is that 11 measures were installed across 7 properties. Phase 2 is now underway with £361,000 allocated to Epping Forest District Council. We're working with our managing agent to deliver upgrades for approximately 35 to 40 homes of varying tenures. A further bid has also been placed for further funding with the scheme's Sustainable Warmth. That combines phase 3 of the Green Homes Grant Scheme and also a new home upgrade grant scheme. So Stephen, if you now want to do the sustainable travel.
Thanks very much, Fran. Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'll start with the electric charging progress. So again, like Fran said, recently published stats show that Epping Forest District is now the single highest number of pure electric, battery electric vehicles on the roads of Essex across all the districts. So the pace is gathering on adoption. However, that's primarily people with the ability to charge at home via off-street parking. So our activity with the car park team with InstaVolt to install rapid chargers. For those who don't know, rapid is probably the fastest. Ultra fast might be another thing, a term that might be used in broadband. But so in other words, 80% charge in perhaps 20 to 25 minutes. So this is all about horses for courses, and there is not enough public charging in the district to meet the needs, especially among those who don't have off-street parking at the moment. However, this is a good first step, low or zero cost, and generate site rental and profit share from Instavolt. So that's a positive move, and we're targeting that. We would think early adopters of that would include a business audience, perhaps minicab drivers, which I'll refer to specifically shortly, and the like. Well located for those purposes, proximity to businesses. The ULEZ ultra low emission zone is coming to the A406 on the 25th of October, which will definitely affect the taxi trade and plenty of other small businesses in the southwest of the district. So we're hoping that will be a catalyst to see more people considering the switch. There's some internal activity, which is probably more in Fran's domain than mine, but we're trialling something called vehicle to grid at the Civic Hub, whereby it's an efficient means for the building's power to be balanced with the vehicles in the fleet actually acting as sort of storage for times when the electricity is more expensive. That's the way I would summarize what that is. And if we are to improve on-street charging, then Essex County Council hold the main cards as they're the Highways Authority. And they have submitted a bid to the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles on-street public charging scheme, for that acronym, to look at ways that power can be delivered to vehicle owners who don't have off-street parking. This is not using the street lamp approach, as far as we understand, which is adopted in many London boroughs. And we are seeing some other trials in Chelmsford of on-street charging in bays on street. So there are moves happening, but I think more progress definitely needed if Essex is to move up the national ladder of on-street charging per 100,000 population. Taxis, I think we have to regard that as part of the sustainable transport mix. There are wards where there's lots of people who don't have a car. So we're doing a survey, perhaps under the umbrella of the climate change consultation with the trade, just to see their view on what are the adoption factors, barriers, incentives, information gaps that they need to consider converting to electric, particularly full electric rather than plug-in hybrid. So that survey will be happening in the next couple of weeks with the trade. The next area is demand responsive transport. I think previous reports we've said that the market conditions were very hard for the Dart 87 service, and largely that has continued. So during peak lockdown periods, we were certainly looking at key workers and others making essential trips. But as things have opened up, we are still seeing reluctance and lack of demand, you know, for example, to reach tube stations, because so many people are working in this hybrid fashion of multiple days a week at home, or indeed full-time working at home. The other factor, which I've now heard on national statistics and from Essex, is that there's major caution still for concessionary pass holders, particularly the elderly, to get back in any numbers on the buses. And that's something we need to address and understand. So one thing we are trialling is a shopper shuttle with an electric vehicle, 14-seat, between the Broadway Loughton and the Epping Forest Shopping Park. Because if you haven't tried it, the walk down there, if you're not, you know, reasonably fit, is not something that you know, someone with mobility problems would want to take on. So we'll use that opportunity to test the vehicle on the full Dart 87 route to Harlow, with a view to seeing whether it stands up to real world usage, and some other potential uses are listed there for the vehicle. There are some issues emerging with home to school transport. So some of the subsidy cuts on public buses, and I'm not talking about the school buses for entitled pupils that Essex have to run on a statutory basis, has affected some of the new intake in secondary schools' ability to get to school. So we're reviewing that carefully. We are seeing demands on Dart 87 for that type of journey, and also some minibus trial, which Epping Forest Community Transport are doing in Chigwell to a number of schools locally. And the early feedback on that is that it's seemingly a well-used service so far with interest. There are some operational financial issues to consider, but I think this whole home to school transport is a big theme which we need to raise with Essex. For their own part, Essex County Council have or are in the process of submitting a bus service improvement plan to the Department for Transport by the end of this month. Districts weren't fully consulted, but there was a briefing call, and there are some funding opportunities to go for within that. And over the next 2 to 5 years, provided DFT like what they're seeing, we will see service rebalancing and improvements, much better passenger information, multi-operator ticketing, etc. So that's the vision for that. And then finally, we're engaging with all relevant parties from Essex Highways to the Corporation of London on a refresh of the Epping Forest transport strategy. And that's underway with a workshop early November. So those are my updates. Are there any questions for myself or Fran, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Councillor Rackham, and then I've got Councillor Lyon and Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. My first question is on page 35. It's about the Climate Change Action Plan. I wondered what we're doing in terms of engaging our councillors who can then go out and speak to their residents about getting involved in the online and the web page process. So that's question number one. And my other question is on page 37, and it is about electric vehicle charging. I know from speaking to people that they are very uncomfortable going out and looking to charge their cars quite a distance away from their properties, and they don't have access to an electric charging point on their actual address that they live in. I know that other councils are doing a good job on this, and I just wondered why we aren't looking at street lamps as a possible source, and what we are actually looking at. I know that it was mentioned briefly, but I think if we want more people to drive electric vehicles, we do need to provide them with the process to be able to do that in a safe environment. So I wondered if you could answer those questions, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, obviously the use of street lights is Essex County Council property, and that I think is where the stumbling block is at the moment. But if I can go to Stephen for responses.
Yes, Fran, would you like to answer the first one first, or shall I go? Oh, I'll go. Yes, so it's an Essex Highways thing with regard to their choice of on-street charging methodology. I'm going to have an update call with London Borough of Redbridge. Okay, somewhat different environment, but they have gone down the street lamp charging route. I think Essex had concerns about obstacles on the pavements, and a lot of their street furniture lamppost is set back from the curb. There are solutions to that, and I've brought some of those to their attention, again, which have been deployed in London. They are looking at a range of other methods. I don't know the volume that would deliver, but they are certainly aware that they need to provide more local charging, as you say, in a safe manner. We are limited in what we can do outside of our own car parks, buildings and estates and so on, but we're pursuing all we can down that route.
Thank you very much. We do have 3 county councillors present this evening who I'm sure have taken note of that and will be able to do a bit of lobbying as well on that. And I think Fran was going to go to take the first questions.
Yes, so for the members' briefing for the Climate Change Action Plan, that is taking place this Thursday evening. So that will be an overview of the events that are happening in the community and also a discussion on the document itself. In terms of briefing, so that you can talk to your people in your area, we have developed a members briefing note that we'll be sending around shortly.
Okay, thank you very much. The order I've got Councillor Murray, then Councillor Wixton, Councillor Lyon.
Yeah, a few points, Chairman. Just to add to what you said, not only have we got 3 Essex County members here who can take on board issues like that, which is important, we have 3 leading Essex County Council members here, which is which is important in terms of how county works. 3 very influential members. Okay, just a few comments, and I don't want to be sidetracked away from the issue because I think this has worked very well. A hybrid meeting, officer here, members here, and input from officers from wherever they are, and it could be Suffolk, it could be Newcastle on Tyne, and if we couldn't have a hybrid meeting on climate change and sustainable travel, what else could you have it on? But I do think there is an important issue, and at some stage I would like to know, maybe if it's somewhere tonight we can have the discussion, or somewhere, kind of who decides which officers are present when a report is published, and so on. That's probably the chairman of the committee, but it's unclear to me what the protocol is, what item is hybrid, what item, because there are certainly some items that I would definitely want the officer present in the meeting, because the mechanics are different than a Zoom meeting. But I don't want to discuss that now, because I think the issues here are too important to be sidetracked on that. Epping Forest District Council appear to have seen the light, because this was an excellent report. And let me show you how I think they've seen the light on 2 important issues. We've moved from wanting to decimate Jessel Green in the local plan to planting 2,300 trees on Jessel Green. And that is, you know, a Damascus conversion, which is absolutely fantastic. But that does raise a few questions that I would like to ask the officer to give us a little bit more detail. I can't actually visualise 2,300 trees. I mean, obviously I can count them, but I can't visualise the amount of space that they take. I also obviously don't know what the likely failure rate is, because you plant 2,300 trees and you don't get 2,300 oak trees or whatever they are in 30 years' time. I understand that. 2 important principles, please. There must be community involvement, and I know you've already contacted Councillor Wixley, who's one of the ward councillors. Fairmead and Broadway are the 2 wards that bound Jessel Green. And it's not just councillors, there's got to be a community involvement. But I do want you to take on board that the open aspect of Jessel Green is really important. So I wouldn't, and I'm sure you'll get this from locals, 2,000 trees sounds great, and that's good, but the open aspect of Jessel Green and the activities that go on, the legal, pleasant social activities that go on in Jessel Green are something that we wouldn't want to lose through the planting of 2,300 trees. So something about that. Second question was, and the officer kind of alluded it, because I knew either Colchester or Chelmsford would come up. He was explaining what Essex were doing, and then he said, they started it in Chelmsford. They've started it, well, he didn't say then Colchester, but that's all I hear when I read anything about Essex County Council and good imaginative initiatives on anything, but here we're talking about green issues. It's always Colchester and Chelmsford that seem to be where it started. So yes, we have got very influential county councillors, but are we happy that in this service area, Epping Forest isn't yet again the neglected part of Essex? Because I have to say that's a feeling we feel on the Loughton side of the M25, I belong to something in Chigwell now, and I talk to a lot of Chigwell residents, and it's a feeling that they feel as well, that Epping Forest is the forgotten part of Essex. And then the other point I wanted to make, and again, it's the other domestic conversion. Some of us have been saying right from the very beginning that when the retail park was built, what you needed was some kind of shuttle service from the Broadway to the retail park. I know Councillor Wixley said it, I said it, a number of other Loughton councillors said it. So well done that we've had this conversion. My key question on that is, how are you going to judge mobility? On what kind of basis or criteria are you judging mobility and the users of the service? But I was very impressed by the written report, and very impressed by the verbal report, wherever it came from today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. I will go to officers, but I have to say that the one word I had written down on my agenda was visualise when thinking about these 2,300 trees. I likewise thinking that there needs to be open space left for the activities for which Chessel Green is currently used by families and youngsters. But if I can now go over to, I'm not sure who's going to take which one first.
I'm happy to take the tree question first, if you'd like. So yes, 2,300 trees does sound like a lot, but just to reassure you, we're not planning to plant over the whole area. When doing a tree walk of the area to plan our proposal, it was noted that it is an open green space and activities do take place, especially on the flat end of the green. So it's important to keep that clear and also keep the slope, I think, on the eastern side clear, as I hear it's popular for sledging. So the way the trees are going to be planted, the idea is to have more periphery type planting and to do some planting close to where trees are currently planted. We will, of course, be consulting with residents on this. They know the local area very well, and will be able to give us details on specific areas that we might need to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread, do you want to come in on that part?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, if I can just quickly come in. On the tree planting, it has come across my desk as a portfolio holder decision, and it hasn't actually been signed off yet. So I was planning to have some discussions with officers, not saying I'm against it, obviously all for tree planting, but making sure it works in the right way for Jessel Green. And I'm just quickly picking up on some of Councillor Murray's points. I'm really lucky to be on the Essex Climate Commission, so hopefully we can have a bit of an Epping Forest voice there. But I would say actually we need to learn the lessons from some of our colleagues across the county. Chelmsford had a massive tree planting programme under the Lib Dem run council in the city there, and I think about 90% of the trees died. So obviously if we're doing that in Epping Forest, we want to make sure it works and it's a sustainable programme. I was really pleased to see actually that we received some funding as part of Essex's bid for forestry funding, so Epping Forest have received a really good share of that. But I think it's really important that we have our voice heard here in Epping Forest, and actually our link to the city and our link to London is really important in that kind of sustainable agenda moving forward. So that's something that I'm really keen to press moving forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think, Stephen, you're going to come in on some of the rest of the questions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to the shuttle, we're not quite nailed down exactly what it's going to do. It won't be the case that we would restrict usage. Anyone can get on, but it'll strictly be an off-peak kind of service. And if anyone shows a concessionary pass, they'll travel free, which we need to get across. I can't put myself in the shoes of a vulnerable older person, but I think key things to avoid perhaps would be getting on when lots of other commuters and school children are on, and this will, just by its operating hours, avoid that side of things.
I think Stephen might have frozen. Yeah. Can we...
Good. Bus back better. Chelmsford doesn't actually get a leg up there in inverted commas, but Braintree, Harlow, Clacton have all got potential focus projects coming out of it. There's also something called the Market Town Focus in Essex's improvement plan ideas, which we need to make sure we get the share of, given that we're a market town environment. So I hope that answers the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think quite a bit of what I was going to say has already been said by Councillor Murray, so I'll try not to go over too much of the same things. I've actually got questions on, or comments as well, on both pages 36 and 37. Yes, as regards Jessel Green, I think that this is a fantastic change, considering at one point through a local plan process. There was talk of building on 75% of Jessel Green. To me, this is wonderful news. When I heard that Jessel Green had been taken out of the local plan for consideration of being built upon, it was a tremendous day for me. I think equivalent in how I felt about it to England winning the World Cup in 1966. I really thought it was such a splendid thing to have saved that valuable green space. But I have been contacted by residents about the number of trees, and I look forward to seeing how the consultation is going to work out. I hope it will be quite wide, and all residents will get a chance to have a word on that. Just going down the page, on item 11 there, this is the upgrade of houses, approximately 35 to 40 homes. Is that, my question there, is that going to be means tested? How is that going to work out? I'd like some more information on that. Going down to item 14, if there is reference there to two-way flows, I just not entirely sure, well, I'm not sure what that is, so if that could be explained, I'd appreciate that. Just going over the page, on the, just a technical thing is my first question on the charging units. I just wondered, is rapid charging detrimental to the car batteries in preference to a trickle charge, or doesn't it make any difference? So that's a technical question. The other thing, I don't know if Stephen remembers, but I had some email correspondence with him a few months ago, and he referred to a bid for off-street charging or on-street charging points. And I was particularly interested in that because he referred to a trial and mentioned roads which are in Rodingwald, which Councillor Murray represents as a district councillor and I represent as a town councillor. And I just wondered if you had any more news on that, because I was quite intrigued by the roads which were mentioned, and if there's any progress on that. On the actual on-street parking issue, I just wonder if priority could be given to some residents in my Fairmead ward who have a housing area of green in front of them, so that they can't cross that because it's over 12 metres. They can't have a crossover. So they haven't got means to trickle charge their electric cars if they have their forecourt converted to a parking space. And I just wonder if sort of priority could be given to those sort of areas where it's not possible to charge your car overnight on your own property. So there's quite a few questions there. I certainly agree with Councillor Murray about the shopping park transport. I think that certainly was raised when the shopping park was first built. So I think that's good news.
Thank you very much. Shall I go to Fran first of all for the questions around the home grants?
Yes, so for the Green Homes grant, I think the question was around the means testing, how that's allocated. So the criteria for receiving the grant is that you have to be on a low income and living in an
We have frozen again.
that you would have to be in receipt of certain benefits or on an income lower than £30,000. And this will all be assessed through our managing agent.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen, are you going to take the other points that were raised?
Yes, thank you. I might call on Fran for this first one. Vehicle to grid is the sort of technical term for what's going on there. So if, as we do, we have a growing fleet of electric small vans and other vehicles charging at one of our premises, then vehicle to grid is a means for the use of those car batteries potentially to put charge back into the building at times when electricity is expensive or scarce, without compromising the vehicle's fully charged status in the morning. Fran, I don't know if you've got anything to expand on that, but that's the concept in layman's terms, as I understand it, of vehicle to grid. Then, yes, Elon Musk himself from Tesla has said that you should not rely solely on rapid chargers. And in general, that's definitely true. This is why we need a mix. So in the concept of something like a taxi firm, high local mileage, it's quite legitimate and they will have a definite need for top-up charging on a speedy basis in the day. But yes, there is no way that a network would solely be built on rapid chargers. I don't know the extent to which it's absolutely proven that battery life would be affected. But even on the ZapMap site, it says, we recommend you don't charge to more than 80% with a rapid charger. The other roads in Loughton were from the previous financial year's OZEV ORC. Of potential users, terraced houses, perhaps with lesser amounts of off-street parking, but that bid was not successful with the DFT's decision making. And I was actually aware of, and just looking around on Google Maps and others, there are quite a few areas where there are large green spaces in front of houses. So yes, I mean, that counts as on street as well. So maybe that's a case that we can put to Essex if their key officers are amenable to this. I think it is a context that will occur in other parts of the county as well, how that's delivered without completely decimating the green space. Initial view was certainly that there are drainage compliant surfaces that you could use in lieu of grass for cars to park on, and therefore use that as the charging method. But as with other things, that's public highway. As far as I understand it, they're not unadopted streets, so Essex would have to get involved in that solution.
Thank you for that. I think perhaps the area that Councillor Wixley was referring to, I know it's the case for one that I was asked about a few years ago in my own ward, going over a grass sward. It's Epping Forest Council housing land, I think, that would be involved in that. So again, that might be something that can be talked about between the different departments.
Yeah.
Councillor Wixley, do you want to come back?
Yeah, on a specific case which I'm aware of, there is actually a lamppost right up against the curb. So it's beyond the green, so that would actually be, in this particular case, I realise it's a very individual one, but that would actually be an ideal opportunity to have a charging point off that lamppost.
Yeah, perhaps you'd send me those details. It may not be the one I'm thinking of. And we do, in fact, own within our social housing estates, we do own some of the lampposts, but I'll take that up with Essex officers.
Thank you. Unless it was something relating to that particular... No, I'll come to you later then, Councillor Patel. Councillor Lyon?
Thank you, Chairman. This is an excellent report, and it's good to see all these initiatives pulled together in one place. So I think I really welcome this. Just going through, I'm interested in the training issue, because I know certainly in Chigwell the Parish Council have declared a climate emergency and are looking for training and support, and I know that Fran has been supporting them, but I'm just wondering if there is any sort of planned training that could be made available to parish councils for their initiatives. The other interesting points here, the electric charging points. I started looking at that probably about 5 years ago, because one of my local residents came to me, a London taxi driver, who didn't have off-street parking, and he was asking at that time. The issue was not trailing leads across the footway, and most of Essex lampposts, I know Councillor Wixley said there's one on the edge, but most of them are set back and therefore are not necessarily adaptable for charging points. But I think the County Council are talking about some sort of gantry system. The other specific question was about the trial that's going on page 36, item 13. It's talking about the success criteria or requirements for success. Those requirements of success are actually the selection of the location. I'm interested in the success of the actual trial and what sort of criteria is being used to measure that, and where would it go from that point onwards? How is it going to be expanded? So I can't see from what's being said here, you know, how successful is it going to be that 50% of the cars charging, etc. I don't really understand how that's going to work. And the other point about the barriers on the taxes, item 16, incentives and barriers. I think
The parish questions.
Sorry? Sorry.
Apologies, my screen froze there for a second. For the
Sorry,
parish council
Fran,
question.
just one
Oh,
moment.
sorry.
We've had a slight problem that you've frozen, and the council line is still asking his question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Did you
apologies.
get
Sorry.
the point about the success criteria on the selection of the location for the trial? Did you hear that?
Stephen, did you hear that?
Yeah. Okay, so the next question was under the item 16 on the sort of taxes. I think the issue here, from what I have ascertained, is you're talking about incentives and barriers, but I think the big issue here is the price of an electric vehicle for local taxi firms or local taxi drivers. And I don't know how we are talking about incentives, whether we are actually going to contribute to their purchase price. So I'll be interested in how that's being thought through and how that's going to work. And on the bus service itself, yes, Chigwell tried a community bus, well known, less than successfully. And I think what's coming out of that is there is a potential for a school bus. But Essex are still insisting that it has to be within their criteria of 3 miles. Otherwise, it's a paid-for service. But I would welcome public transport, because we're certainly building more and more properties with less and less parking. So we do need an alternative strategy that's going to take people out of their cars. So that's my points. Thank you.
I think there was quite a lot there. So if I can ask, I think probably most of them came under your area, Stephen. And you've just put yourself on mute.
Sorry, is that right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Well, Instavolt ultimately will be judged on usage. They're a commercial company, and this solution is worth trialling in what I think you will agree is an underused car park. So it's certainly worth the trial. So it's a rental generating site, and if it is very successful above a certain threshold, which I'm not entirely sure of what that is, there is a sort of profit share element. So it's a premium type service, as we've said, definitely not for your only charger, but for the likes of the taxi trade, perhaps SMEs and the like, with vans in the industrial estate to get into London. That's it. And when one looks at the site ZapMap, you will very quickly see whether a site is going well on the reliability front. I'll investigate whether they summarize that perhaps on an annual basis for sites, but you can certainly tell on there whether a site is well regarded by EV drivers, because they will very quickly say it was out of order or it was iced, as in someone parked a diesel or petrol car in it, etc. So those are the criteria for that. And then I think we would make a judgment on that usage. We'd need to make an informed judgment on whether this solution could work in other EFDC car parks. The electricity supply is not suitable in all of them by any means, but we'll take this first one as a trial. On the taxi side of things, I agree price has historically been the biggest single issue, but there are certainly contract rental terms now that are extremely attractive, that attract some other subsidy inherent. So for the same monthly cost on contract rental, a taxi driver, minicab driver could conceivably get a pure electric vehicle that's equivalent to a much more expensive or higher sort of grade petrol car. I think in June or July, Tesla Model 3 was the single biggest selling vehicle of any description in the UK, largely because of these incentives through salary sacrifice schemes for high earners and contract rental schemes and financing designed by the industry. So I think there's some scope that if we point the trade in the right directions and with advice from the finance industry and manufacturers, we can accelerate the uptake there. And yes, certainly the Chigwell parish trial has been very well worth doing, but we do need to understand all the operational aspects of this and what Essex's policy is on home to school transport. Very early days on that.
Thank you very much for those comments and answers. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I found this a very interesting report as well, and lots of things going on. I've got several questions. The action plan, paragraph 2, refers to how the consultation is being done, primarily online, but it does mention a series of in-person events with members, youth council and the community. I wondered what the community actually means, who is being included in that, how you're going to choose who these people are. Because I'm a bit concerned about it all being so online and not sort of for people who don't have that access. So could you just say a bit about, perhaps later, what the community is going to be? The climate change staff training sounds really interesting as well. Already one of the members has asked about this being available for parishes, but will it be available for community groups as well to work through and become more informed? Moving on to tree planting, it's good that we're so keen on planting trees, but as fast as we plant trees, residents are paving over their front gardens and getting rid of all their vegetation and shrubs and so forth. And I just wondered if we can do something about an awareness campaign or an education campaign. It's something I asked the portfolio holder about a year ago, but I haven't seen any sort of particular action coming from that. But so many residents are paving over their front gardens completely and not leaving any vegetation at all, that it just seems something we need to address. Moving on to electric charge points, I welcome that. It's something also I've been asked about for a long time, and in fact one of my residents who's very knowledgeable came and did a presentation to the then portfolio holder and service director with some of the issues that we need to be thought about, and it's moved on a lot since then. Yes, I welcome the points, but there was some publicity given to somewhere in Essex where disabled drivers are finding it very hard to actually access the points. I don't quite know what it was that made it difficult for them to access it, but there was a general sort of plea from the disabled organisations to consider their needs, so just flag up that when you're deciding on their location, etc. Yeah, and just really good to hear Councillor Murray mention Chelmsford and Colchester, because of course they're Lib Dem, lots of Lib Dem councillors there and run by Lib Dems in Chelmsford, so it's good to get all that sort of acknowledgement. But yeah, if I could have answer those questions, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm happy to take the consultation questions.
Sorry, I think one of the county councillors wanted to come back on the last point first. We can do that first.
Apologies.
Microphone.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Whitehouse needs to get up with the times. Colchester is now Conservative run. They rejected Conservative Lib Dems in May. And of course, as we heard earlier on, Chelmsford are so successful planting trees, 90% of them died.
That's what you get when you vote Lib Dem.
Thank you for those comments. I think we'll now move back to the crux of the meeting, this part of it, and if I can go to Fran for the first.
Yeah. So for the consultation and the community Q&A, this will be open to all residents, businesses and organisations. So we'll be publicising this as widely as possible. So we want responses to the consultation from a very wide audience, as this is an issue that is going to affect everybody. Yeah, so the more the merrier, really. The community Q&A will be taking place online, and and it will be on the 26th of October. For the training part of things, back to Councillor Lyon's question, it links in with this. The carbon literacy course that we use, they are developing a parish and town council course and also a community leaders course as well. So I can update you on those when I know more about timeframes to expect those to be available. For the parish and town council part of it, I think is the EALC, or the Essex Association of Local Councils. They have been running some climate change training recently. So another area that can be looked into there as well. With regards to the paving over, I'm not too familiar with this in the area, but perhaps it is something that we could think about maybe in planning or something.
Thank you. I think there's a problem here in the fact that people need to get their cars nearer to the house, so perhaps in order to do so, some of them will feel it necessary to pave over their front gardens to move their cars onto them. So it's, yeah, a catch-22 almost on that one, I think, in some cases. Stephen, you could take some of that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'd need to understand a bit more about what issues people may face. Now, unfortunately, I think these are national or even international standard of connectors to chargers. I once struggled to get a Renault Zoe into a public charge point. So the dexterity side of things, and especially when they're newly installed, is an issue. Interestingly, we have had a resident request from social housing on Limes Farm Estate for a Motability EV car to be installed. So that person might make a good case study, or can certainly ask her about what issues are faced. And I'll look into any other published information. As I say, some of this is just down to physical kit that is conforming to national, international standards. So, but yes, let me look into any published information on that as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heap.
Thank you, Chairman. This is just comments, really, not particularly a question. In terms of electric charging points, Buckerstill has always had much more in common with Woodford and Redbridge than it does with, say, Roydon, for example. So I would like to think that there could be a flexible approach to charging points put all over the district. And there's also a need, because of the cuts to the 167. A lot of residents in the morning are wanting to send their children to school by bus, and it's particularly hard. So if we could have more of that, or maybe even a bus running up and down Queen's Road, because that's quite steep.
Thank you. Councillor Wixley, you wanted to come back with a quick question?
Yeah, I'm quite intrigued by this figure of 90% of the trees dying in Chelmsford. I'm sure it's not all the fault of the Lib Dems, but possibly it is. I don't know. I couldn't possibly comment. But I think the serious point here is that has any research been done as to why 90% of the trees died? And can we learn from that? Because maybe 90% of those that are going to be on Jessel Green could die. So I think there is a serious point there to be explored.
I'm sure there is in that one, but it's presumably putting the right trees in the right place. Stephen, you wanted to come back on it?
That's probably more Fran's area, Chair, actually.
Yes, I'm happy to come back on that. Yes, I'm not too familiar with the Chelmsford project, but for the Jessel Green project, we're working with the tree officers to, as you say, the right tree in the right place is very important, particularly with areas of the site that can get quite wet. So it's just making sure that the trees are hardy to that. There is, of course, expected to be some loss of trees. The condition of the grant, I think, is to keep the survival rate above 75%. So I'll be looking to put in a maintenance programme that will keep them as alive as possible. And also by involving the community in the process, we hope that we can reduce the amount of vandalism as well on the trees.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread, you wanted to come in on that one?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't proclaim to be a tree expert, but I understand it was to do with the age of the trees.
So in Chelmsford, they planted a great deal and they were all very young. So I think the advice usually is to go for a more mature tree, which is more expensive, but plant less. So I'm sure that's something that we'll take on board. But as I say, I'm not an expert on trees, but I've heard feedback from that.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings?
I used to be an expert on trees, so I'll tell you why. Basically, it depends on the size of the tree that you plant. If you plant whips, which are up to 30 centimetres in height, you slip plant them, and basically you'll plant 60 an hour, a minute, something like that. That's how they plant a forest. But the death rate in that sort of planting is up to 80%, quite easily, in the way they're planted. They're bare root, so they don't come with any soil around the root, so you're in fact putting quite a sterile plant into the ground. If you want a better success rate, then you plant bigger trees, standard trees or extra heavy standard trees. They've got a much bigger girth, 10 to 12 centimetres or 12 to 14 centimetres girth, and you can get them bare rooted. But the better success rate, the trees I plant in my garden basically are all pot grown basically, from the same supplier as supplies the Queen, and they're superb. That's where you get a very, very good quality result, but you've got to stake it, you've got to plant it properly, you've got to look after it. And what I would say to the when these 2,300 trees are planted on Jessel Green, that basically you must get the local children involved, because I was involved in National Tree Week many, many years ago, slip planting with whips, and you get children from the local schools. It gave them ownership of what of the trees, so there was far less damage basically in future years. The only thing I would say about planting a nice big tree, which you'll get in sort of Loughton High Road or any of the areas around there, they're a great target for people that have had slightly too much to drink, and they usually end up being bent. So you're always going to lose some. There you go. Yes, yeah. Can I just say one more thing? Although black cabs don't operate, obviously, in our district, an awful lot of their drivers do live here. So there's going to be a great demand for charging black cabs as well as the mini cabs. There we are. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and you certainly will have taken on board the issues around the right type of trees. Stephen, you wanted to come back on that, or was you just?
Just to confirm, we've had some statistics rather than an actual list of licensed TfL black cabs and Uber type cabs. And yes, there are many, many TfL licensed drivers in the district. We're going to look at a way to assess them. We do get them coming in as residents with queries. The most recent one was in Waltham Abbey, guy living in a terraced house who had on trialling one of the new electric London black cabs and was charging in Lidl overnight and was thinking of giving the cab back because it wasn't viable with their range and lack of charging to do it. So yes, we want to engage with the black cab trade as well as our own licensed drivers.
Thank you for that. And finally, if I can go to Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. I echo the comments already made by Councillor Lyon that this report really pulls together a lot of the Council's initiatives into one document and is a really good way of highlighting what work is taking place. Just a couple of questions and points. In terms of the climate change web pages that were mentioned under section 4, I was wondering, is this likely just to be a series of text, or will there be images, videos, etc.? Because something that's worked really well, particularly in highlighting topics that the youth councillors have taken forward, are short videos, and it'd be really good to use the youth council to promote some of the literature around climate change in particular. I mean, the future is theirs, and they are a really important voice for us, and we should be utilising their voice to wider residents. The other point I wanted to make is that when we now procure, we go out for procurement, are we now enforcing upon a policy, or are we asking externals to provide their policies or their policy around climate, how they're going to enhance the principles of climate action, climate change, etc. And finally, regarding the simple shopper shuttle. I know it's been targeted for low mobility people, but is this bus going to be those special buses which are able to drop right down to pavement levels? Because obviously if we want to make it as accessible for elderly, disabled or residents who may have some disability. So I just wanted to clarify that point, please.
Right, thank you for that. Stephen?
Thanks. We're renting the shuttle bus just to test it under real world conditions. And at the moment, we're not going to adjust the vehicle in the short term. If this trial is successful, or even pre-Christmas, if it proves successful, we can get those adjustments made. At the moment, we'll test the concept as is. But as I said to the previous question, anyone will be able to get on this. If you're a concessionary pass holder, you travel for nothing. And as I've said, we can monitor this carefully. If the fully accessible version is needed, we'll make those adjustments. And if the trial is successful, I think we should certainly look at buying this vehicle outright for future use and possibly take it around to other parts of the district and other uses.
Thank you. There was also the question around the use of the Youth Council for any video type presentations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that I've noted the point on the Youth Council video for the future. In terms of the website, it is a mixture of text with hints and tips, and then there are also some pictures and some video explainers on there as well as links to external information for more information. And then on the procurement side of things, the procurement strategy was updated, I think, in January this year to include more of an emphasis on climate change in terms of individual suppliers. So I'm not so sure on that, but I can get back to you on it.
Thank you very much. I mean, the procurement strategy would have been agreed by the Cabinet, so it will be a document that will be easily accessible. Let's just see what is in there now. Right, thank you very much. I think we've had a very good and wide-ranging discussion around this particular report. Thank you very much to Fran and Stephen, both for the report and for the taking all those questions, comments, and taking on board what is being said by members. Obviously quite a lot there to take away as well. I'm just looking at Nick, on the basis that this comes in under your name. Have you got anything you wish to add to this, or do you feel we've covered everything?
I think you've covered everything. Post the consultation, obviously a fuller report will be brought back to members that will pick up on all the points, as well as obviously give further progress on many of the initiatives that are ongoing. The tree planting forms part of the green infrastructure strategy as well, which can be considered in the future.
Thank you very much for that. And as I say, thank you, Fran and Steve, again for the input you've put into this evening's meeting. Thank you. If we now move on to agenda item 10, which is the COVID-19 update. Andrew, are you taking us through that a bit? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a while since we've had a report on COVID matters presented to the Council. So this report provides an update on the current situation in terms of Epping Forest District and how the Council's dealing with the issues as well. In the report it says that the current infection rate was around 240 infections per 100,000. I did check today and it's currently around about 220 infections per 100,000. It's been quite stable for a long period of time, actually. Most of the infections are in the age group 11 to 18, so the school-aged children, which is probably not a huge surprise. But infection rates in other groups is still comparatively low and stable, and has been so for some period of time now. And despite COVID probably dropping out of the headlines a little bit in recent weeks or months,
there's still quite a lot going on within the council right now, and that's set out within the report. So there are things we're still doing in terms of response, and as the report says, that there's still quite a lot of information and marshalling that we're doing around the district to try and make sure that people don't forget about it and continue to comply with the rules or guidance, at least, that's out there to make sure that people move around safely. There's obviously issues in terms of how we run services and also in terms of demand for services as well. So we're still seeing some services impacted, such as waste, as an example, where we're seeing higher collection volumes than we did prior to COVID. Pleased to say a lot of the impact on leisure centres has rebounded back now, and probably we're seeing even higher numbers of users through our leisure centres than we did before. So it's not all bad in that respect. Staff still working largely from home, something that we're considering in terms of how do we get that right balance, but it's, we're still just recently come out of the summer period, and so we said we'd use August and September for staff to find a balance of office working and home working that works for them, but also for the organisation and the residents as well. And we're still establishing what that might look like, really, if I'm honest. Report talks about, as I say, a lot of the marshalling activity we're doing, and then looks ahead a bit to the winter period, where there is, of course, a risk that infection rates may rise, and what might happen in that scenario. So we'll be guided by, have been guided by, and will continue to be guided by the government's plans in response to that. But even under the government's two plans, Plan A and Plan B, the worst case scenario is Plan B. Even in that environment, probably our current way of working would still be compliant. So in terms of the impact on the council and its operation, it doesn't look too severe, even if the government has to adopt Plan B. That's probably all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Can I just quickly ask first, do we get any indication of whether the impact was on schools returning? Are there actual numbers that separate the school-age children from the adult population?
Yes, so we get all infection rates provided on a daily basis across bandings of age groups, and as I say, the 11 to 18 age group is separated out, so we can see what the infection trend is. It may have gone up a little bit, but actually the line across the months, weeks and months still looks fairly steady, actually, even in that age group. I think there is obviously an impact in terms of children passing the virus between themselves in the school environment. But it doesn't seem to be, at least in the Epping environment, that large at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Rackham?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. On to point 14, I'm a bit concerned to see that my ward in Grangehill has had quite a low uptake of the vaccinations. And I wondered what we are doing to promote within our communities, using our shops, perhaps our community centres, churches, surgeries, to make sure that the word is getting out there and people are, as many people as possible, are getting vaccinated. So if I could have an answer to that, please.
Thank you. Andrew? Or Councillor Patel?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Rackham. I think at the last full council meeting I did actually respond to a question around the vaccination programme and signposted councillors to where the vaccination points are within their local areas. I mean, the vaccination rollout has been very successful right throughout the district, and we've worked in conjunction with our health partners. I know that there were pop-up buses that were deployed as well into the Limes Farm area, and we've got council's marshals who are park guard and ex-jobs who are actively patrolling around, knocking on doors based on the data that comes back, and engaging with residents to go out and get vaccinated. Ultimately, it is a person's choice at the end of the day. And I suppose we can only go so far as to ensure that there is a higher uptake in the number of people who are getting vaccinated.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, that is the bottom line, unfortunately. It is personal choice at the end of the day. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I was talking about a week ago to two of the marshals who are handing out the tests in the high street, and they were talking about the areas where there's poor, low uptake, because they've been out there as well. And they asked if it had been considered to have some sort of incentive for the young people in those areas, some sort of voucher that was for somewhere they'd like to go. I just wondered if that had been thought about.
Councillor Patel?
Well, to be honest, I think, you know, in terms of promoting one to the vaccine, essentially the programme regime that we followed has been following the government's guidance. And I think any type of voucher system would have been via a government incentive, essentially incentivising us to roll that out to residents to utilise. I'm unaware of any other local authority area that are running similar types of schemes.
Thank you. I think Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Yeah, just to expand upon what Councillor Patel said, I was in a briefing with Dr. Gogarty the other day, and actually what I found really interesting, the age group they're struggling to engage the most is actually the 25 to about 40-year-old, and actually the biggest concern there is that particularly young women are concerned around fertility, and this has been a real theme. So I think, and it's similar with younger people, it's that theme of education, because actually, and I'm sure Peter, who's a doctor, would agree with me, saying that you're scared that the vaccine will give you fertility challenges is the same as saying you're concerned that giving you COVID would give you fertility challenges. So I think there's some really important messages to put out there. But I think what is really key, actually, the younger people have been really receptive to some of the government messages around actually you need this if you want to go out and go clubbing and see your friends, but it's that kind of my generation, the 25 pluses, that have been less receptive, and that's the people we really need to reach out to.
Thank you. Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think first of all, I'd just like to say I think how well things are organised in this building. You know, there's lots of points to wipe your hands and one thing and another. But it was just one thing I noticed last week at the Plan South meeting. All our positions were laid out and everybody was sitting next to it, somebody else, whereas tonight we've got the freedom to spread out, which is obviously safer. So I just feel that's a point perhaps I could take on board, that when we haven't got the chamber full up, that option to spread out and at least leave a space between us is worth, you know, considering. I don't know why it was necessary to cramp us all up at the Plan South meeting when there was plenty of space, and as I say, tonight we've got the option to spread out, which seems preferable.
Thank you. I think that is a valid point, actually, and one that perhaps officers can take on board at future meetings. Councillor Murray.
I think that's a good point, let officers planning for future meetings, but it wasn't a problem, Madam Chairman. I just picked up my thing and moved.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't think we've got any other questions on this report, so thank you very much for the report, and obviously it is something that we will still be keeping our eye on over the coming months ahead. I think it's not going to be something that... Oh, Councillor Patel?
Sorry, Chairman, can I just add that the Portfolio Advisory Group hasn't met for a number of months because essentially the work of the group has become council business again. So if there is a need for us to meet, then we will do so. But the economic recovery plan essentially has become business as usual, and the social recovery plan, which has moved over now to the wider determinants group, is moving forward through the Health and Wellbeing Board.
Yeah, but at least we do know that group could still be reconvened if necessary at some point. Thank you for that. Right, if we can move on to... Well, thank you for the report, Andrew, as well. Item 11 is around the local high street task and finish panel, which is something which has been around for a while. This report is putting forward possible options. I don't know whether, Nick, you want to say anything about this?
Yes, briefly, but with your permission, Chair, can I just confirm that the revised procurement strategy for 2020 to 25 includes one-page guidance on climate change and environmental sustainability, and urges managers within the authority to consider the implications on the environment and climate in awarding contracts. So,
thank you for that. So that answers that question. And now the...
Returning to agenda item 11, the report essentially says, obviously the group was initially set up to consider what to do in the high street. Circumstances have obviously occurred and separate reports have been produced around immediate actions to improve high streets with partners, town councils and the like, and they have passed through both scrutiny and the Cabinet and are in action at this moment in time. So this report essentially says that and recommends a series of options, but the most obvious option is if either to take down the committee or for it to meet once and consider what the future role of such a committee or start and finish group would be, bearing in mind the time horizon has changed, circumstances have changed, particular actions have been agreed for at least the short term.
Can I just ask, do we have any members of this committee who were sitting on that? Either of you got any comments on what you would think at this point in time as to whether, as I say, as Nick has said, I think there's probably the two main options are to disband it at this point, which would have to be with the agreement of this Overview and Scrutiny Committee, or for the Task and Finish panel to meet for one more time themselves to make that decision for themselves or to see a way forward within it. Councillor Rackham, you want to make it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I thought it was a really, really worthwhile panel, and I would really like to see it brought back. I think with that in mind, it would be good anyway for the panel to meet once more and discuss their best way forward. But I would definitely like to see it brought back, especially now with all the problems we will face on the high street coming forward the next
Thank
few
you for that.
months.
And Councillor Whitehouse, have you got anything you'd like to add on that? Councillor Whitehouse?
Yes, Chairman, I didn't hear the questions you asked just now. I
it
find
was-
you're talking very quietly, but I was going to comment on the report as such.
Well, I think at this point in time there are two decisions to be taken. One is either that the Task and Finish panel be disbanded by this Overview and Scrutiny Committee, or that it agree that it meets at this point in time one more time for they themselves to have that discussion and to see whether or not they think it worthwhile going forward at this time, or whether to have a delay and bring it back later.
Well, in that case, Chairman, I think that it does need to meet once because there's a lot of members who are on it who are not here tonight. But personally, I think that things have changed, and although we were going to do some really exciting work, I was really, looking forward to the work that was laid out that we wanted to do. I think things have changed, and I think I would go for option B, that those of us who are on the Task and Finish should be involved in whatever's happening in the local work on the town centres. But paragraph 2 at the top of the page, it says that attempts to be made and continue to include all local councillors. It's just not happening. I mean, when we had the town centre report come to, I think it was Cabinet, it said that we'd all been involved. Certainly I and my colleagues hadn't heard anything about it. We weren't included. I've heard nothing since that meeting. I have absolutely no idea what's happening to the town centre report for Epping. And although it says town councils are involved, my colleagues weren't involved. So although we represent half of Epping, we've had no involvement in this report at all. So perhaps we could, whoever got it, perhaps Mr. Dorr, could send it our way so we're updated on what's happening.
Yes, Nick.
So, certainly, obviously within the time frame attempts are made to involve as many people as possible, and going forward people will need to be involved through potentially town council mechanisms as well as EFDC mechanisms. So I'll reconfirm what you have said with Paul Messenger, who is leading the individual projects for the town centres, and he'll make sure that individuals are contacted. The aim is to be involving. Indeed, part of the consideration of the reports themselves is that it will only work if other groups involve themselves with, you know, carrying forward things in the future, contributing, using town councils, using existing kind of retail and commercial groups, etc. So I apologise, and I will urge him to contact you directly.
Councillor Barkham. Sorry, Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. There were documents circulated with some very quick fixes that were recommended. Where do we stand on those, please?
Yes, effectively all the reports were signed off over, I think, a 6-month period. They're due to report back progress against the individual targets in January. That's been discussed with Councillor Phillips in January timescale. If you want an informal update before then, obviously that can be given, but the first proper kind of progress report is in January.
Thank you. So I think probably Councillor Kane.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on this one with my parochial hat on, Waltham Abbey hat on. The short-term measures that have been taken in Waltham Abbey and COVID itself and the subsequent release from lockdown really does seem to have brought life back into Sun Street in Waltham Abbey. The cafe culture that has been that we see happening in Sun Street with the tables and chairs out in the street, etc. There is, I hate to say the word, but there is a buzz about Sun Street now which has been missing for quite some time, and it's almost a silver lining of COVID.
Thank you for those comments. I think I noted that myself some time ago when I went into Sun Street and noticed that there was more activity and the tables and chairs out. So it's, as you say, a positive from there. So I think we're at the situation, from what I'm getting, particularly from the members of the Task and Finish panel, that we agree that they should meet at least one more time and give them the opportunity themselves to look at where they've been, where they could go forward to, and make a decision as to whether it continues at this time or whether there is a lapse, a time lapse to then come back again in a few months down the line. So are members happy to agree that?
Yep, agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. We now come on to agenda item 12, which is the key decision list, and if we turn to page 55 and go through the work programmes for the portfolio holders. Page 55 is the leader's portfolio. Has anybody got any questions on this to the leader? No?
Do a lot of work, does he?
He's got more than some people. Page 56, planning and sustainability. Unfortunately, Councillor Bedford couldn't be here this evening as he had another meeting, but if there are any questions, I believe the leader might be able to take them. No. And then page 57, finance, client and economic development. Again, the portfolio holder, Councillor Phillip, was somewhat busy this evening, but I'm sure Councillor Whitbread could take anything if anybody has any questions. No. Environmental and technical services. I'm beginning to sound like a record that's needle that's got stuck in the groove of a record, but unfortunately Councillor Avey is not here this evening. But if there are any questions, again, I'm sure one of the other cabinet members will be able to take it. Councillor Whitehouse.
Yes, Chairman, the waste contract. We had a waste task and finish. I think, were you chairman of that? And I thought that we were going to have another meeting after, you know, a long time had elapsed, just to sort of tie things up. And I was, you know, it doesn't look as if this is coming to any scrutiny before it's going to cabinet for discussion, for decision. But
this is very early stages, I think, of the waste contract.
Oh, this is a different contract, is it?
Yes. Nick, you want to...
So work is ongoing at the moment on an officer's basis around recommendations of what should be done, because we're fast approaching a point, well, it's in fact two and a half years out, where we can either extend the contract under the current terms of the contract or effectively go out to procurement. So we need a way forward. So the aim is that it would be go to scrutiny and then to cabinet, which is the normal manner of doing things. The exact timing is just currently being discussed.
I think what you've got on here, the description to present strategic options for the waste contract, that's just, as Nick has said, it's whether we go out, whether we renew. It's at a much lower level.
Yeah, we obviously entered into a contract, and there was an earlier comment about effectively not procuring but extending the contract per the contract terms and conditions versus going to the market and carrying out a full procurement exercise. That's the basic issue in play.
Okay. Anything else on Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, are we on page 59? Got slightly lost.
Oh, no, page 58 still.
Oh, 58, okay. Well, I've got something on 59.
You're right. I don't think we've got anything else on 58, so Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, it's just that the second item down there, a new policy in brackets trees. It says decision date was the 21st of June. I think that's possibly the date when this policy was discussed in draft form. I just wonder if there's been any progress on actually completing the policy.
Yes, I did raise that one at the briefing earlier, but Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that policy was discussed in June, and I haven't had the final policy come across my desk yet, but I'll follow that up tomorrow with officers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, if I can just jump you back to the bottom of page 58, the off-street parking tariff review. Members may not be aware that we've organised an extraordinary meeting of the Stronger Place Select Committee for the 2nd of November, so that Select Committee gets to view the proposals before it comes to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, yes, and it will come through to members through Democratic Services notices. Councillor Whitehouse.
Mr. Chairman, on page 59,
yes.
The proposed change of service charges for right to buy says new policy. Is that coming to scrutiny? Because I thought we'd established new policies, new strategies, things did come to scrutiny. But I'm not clear if it is or isn't on here.
That's the new fees and charges. Councillor Whitbread?
It will become scrutiny, Chair.
Yeah, it will, yeah. Okay, thank you. And that will be to the Community Select Committee? Yeah, thank you. Anything else on that page? No. Oh, there's a little bit over the page on this one, homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. Obviously that's further away now, but it is one that obviously I'm assuming will come through one of the scrutiny panels as well. We have nothing on customer and partnership. Community and regulatory services. Again, I'm just highlight the markets policy, which I assume will also come through scrutiny before it goes to Cabinet. Janet. Councillor Whitehouse? That was your question. No. Councillor Patel, you want?
Yes, Chairman. I believe it could have been a portfolio holder decision, but as it is a policy, I'm happy for it to follow the scrutiny route before it comes to Cabinet for approval.
I think probably on the basis that if we are talking about town centre markets as well as perhaps North Weald, then it probably of interest to a lot of people. Thank you. And corporate services, just the one item there on leaseholder insurance policy renewal. I'm assuming that that's a fairly standard type of one. I don't see any questions or any comments on it. Councillor Murray.
I mean, I wanted to make a comment on Cabinet business, if that's okay, because that's the agenda item.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into detail on it, but if members haven't been able to, I really would urge them to have a look at the webcast from last night's Cabinet meeting. Lots of interesting things, but I draw your attention particularly to item 12, the updated medium-term financial plan. I wouldn't attempt to summarise in 30 seconds all the key issues there. But we've got some difficult years ahead, and I think the council leader would agree. Well, it became clear last night, and it's been flagged up earlier actually. So it is really worth looking at item 12, updated medium-term financial plan, if members want to understand the financial issues and difficulties that we'll be facing us in the next few years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for highlighting that. Yes, obviously it will be important to all areas of council moving forward in the next periods. Right, if we can move on to item 13, which is the proposed revised terms of reference for the Stronger Place Select Committee. We have got a proposal on Appendix A, and this has come about through discussion at this Select Committee. So, as chairman of that committee, if I can go to Councillor Lyon just to say a few words about this.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, taking on the Stronger Place Select Committee, my first point of call was to ask members what they thought, and I got quite a considerable feedback from members, and part of that was to improve the terms of reference, particularly for new members of the committee who didn't necessarily understand that select committee meant scrutiny and what scrutiny meant, and that has been reflected in what has been put down here as the terms of reference. There was also suggestions for what was to be included in the work programme. The work programme that we inherited from last year was fairly small, so I put it out to members to say what were the things they felt was important to actually review, and we've got a list which is now the work programme that's actually been attached. So this was really trying to build up an understanding of members as to the terms of reference and what they were expected to do and how they were expected to gather information. And that's resulted in this. So this was put to the chairs, the scrutiny chairs meeting, and there was a comment made about the detail in it, and that has been reviewed. So now it's a little bit more succinct, and the work programme is being contained in one place. There was a comment about what's been left out. Well, nothing's been left out. In fact, the work programme has been enhanced considerably to actually reflect what members have asked for. And there was a comment at the last meeting by a cabinet member that he welcomed this idea and was encouraging the other chairs of the other select committees to do the same. So I present the report for the committee to consider.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitehouse and then Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was at a Stronger Place when they were discussing this, and it was at the beginning of the report, there was a very interesting section, I think Mr. Daw had written it, about what exactly the Scrutiny Committee covered, and it would be really helpful if the other Scrutiny Committees could do the same. I think this is really great. But I do have a question about item 7 on page 68, the district-wide leisure services development. I'm not sure that that does actually come under Stronger Place. If you look on page 52, where the corporate aims are set out under Stronger Communities, Stronger Place and Stronger Council, it lists the items that come under each of those headings, and Stronger Communities has actually got providing culture and leisure opportunities. So it looks as if we're aligning the scrutiny committees with the corporate aims, and that leisure should actually be in Stronger Communities and not in Stronger Place. Perhaps somebody could have a look at that.
Councillor Lyon, do you want to comment on that?
I've got no strong view on this. I think the most important thing is some clarity between the committees, and there has been some question marks about which goes to which. So if there is a view that this should go to communities, then that's fine. I think there's enough work now within the work plan to actually, for the remaining time of the year, to actually deal with that as necessary. I have no strong views.
Certainly it would fit more with the corporate picture, I think, rather than leaving it where it is. Councillor Murray?
That wasn't what I was going to speak on, but on the basis of what I've heard and looking at some of the items that the Community Select Committee looked at last time, for example, the museum collection policy, I would have thought probably number 7 should be a Communities Select Committee. My point was item 6 on the key objectives, which I think is really important to engage with the community and encourage community engagement. I just wondered how you were going to operationalise that key objective. When you scrutinise the following corporate projects, is that going to be one of the criteria on which you scrutinise, you know, how much community and community engagement there has been around that issue? So, for example, when you come to scrutinise the Epping Centre Development Plan, and I only picked that because it's kind of high up on the list, one of your judgments in terms of scrutiny will be, you know, tell us about your community engagement, tell us about how you've engaged in the community, and it works for nearly all of these. So is that how you would intend operationalising, I don't like that word really, putting into practice that objective?
Thank you for the suggestion. Yes.
Right, thank you for that. Any other comments? I mean, I think the question, well, the message has gone out that perhaps other select committees should also look at the way in which their terms of reference are set out and put together. And as you rightly say, for newer members coming in, it does give a clearer picture of what sits where. So, sorry, Councillor Kane.
Thank you. I was the guilty party who suggested this would be a very good idea for the other scrutiny committees to look at, not so much to avoid replication, but more to make sure there were no omissions when cross-referencing against the corporate aims and objectives. So I think that's very important. And I would make a plea to both Councillor Lyon and other chairmen on the select committees, items 3 and item 5, which could be interpreted to look at cabinet policies, pre-scrutiny on cabinet decisions. Just make sure you leave enough time in your work schedule to do that job as well as the other things you want to do.
Yeah. I think time is an issue on all of these things. Councillor Lyon.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I know one of the comments that came back from members of the committee was that they weren't given enough time to actually look at decisions, and many of them were sort of fait accompli, so they were there too late. So I think this is absolutely vital that we get in early and see these things before they're sort of finally formulated. So the better, more time from officers that can present things at an earlier opportunity, the better. Thank you.
And I think some more consideration is going to be given in the way in which the calendar is put together in the future to try and make sure that meetings do fit in a logical sequence around timing. So with the removal of number 7 on page 68, are members happy that we agree these revised terms of reference for the Stronger Place Select Committee?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And then we come on to the work programmes. Normally, Mr Woodhall would take us through the overview and scrutiny one, but if we just very quickly look through at what we've got ahead of us, the next meeting is the 18th of November, enforcement project and the corporate plan, the Q2 performance. Those, on the face of it, 2 items doesn't seem a lot, but equally it's quite often the case that these items can get quite involved and take longer than we think they're going to. So if members are happy that we stick with those 2 items. Councillor Whitehouse?
Chairman, I'm having real difficulty hearing what you're saying. I hear the others fine, but I'm just not hearing you. I have 2 things I'd like to put on the work programme. Is now the time to say them or later?
Sorry, say that again?
I have 2 items I wanted to put forward for the work programme.
You've got 2 items that you want to put forward?
Yes.
And what were they?
Well, one, I don't know where it would go, which scrutiny committee. The other one is for communities. So do you want me to tell you now?
Well, yes.
About a year ago, a report came to Scrutiny, which led me to ask what new staff were told about how the council functions and, you know, how the role of councillors. And that led to a meeting I had with two of the HR staff. And they told me that the new members were just asked to look at two parts of the on the web about the council, which really wasn't adequate at all. The presentation that Gary Woodall does for new councillors about how the council works is really good, and I thought that might be adapted, but this is something that members should really be involved with, you know, giving some guidance on what we would like new staff to be told about the council and about our work. And I just wondered if we could have a report to one of the scrutiny committees about what does go into the induction and any ideas that HR may have got for taking this forward, and then we can put in our ideas if we feel that more is needed.
And you said you had a second one.
And the other one is communities. This arises from another member who can't be here tonight, who was very concerned that the houses that are being bought under Right by Receipts are being let at affordable rents. She knows of 10 people on the waiting list who turned down the opportunity of going to one of those houses because they couldn't afford the rent. So it's something I'm very interested in as well, and we would like to ask for a report showing this is the whole house building programme, that the properties are being built under the house building programme and the ones that are being bought. How many are rented at social rents, how many are rented at affordable rents, and who makes the decision, and what is it based on?
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread, do you want to come back on that one?
I'm sure it would be happy, thank you Chairman, sorry. I'm sure the officers would be happy to bring this up. Actually, it's one of the debates we're having. It's easier to get social rents when you build on scale, and at present we haven't been building quite on the scale that would make us eligible for social rents, and we're in conversations with Homes England and we've been working on projects, but it is something we're looking at in terms of the future of the council house building programme. But I'm happy whether we include that in the council house building committee or in a future community select committee. That's something we can certainly report back on.
Chairman, Community Select Committee, please, because that's where we
Yes, I was
scrutinise
just going to say
things.
that certainly is one that would go into communities quite easily. Regarding the induction process, do you want to put your microphone on?
Yes, happy to bring a report forward.
So, is that something that we could put into the 18th of November, or is it too short a period?
I'd prefer the meeting after, if that's possible.
No, it was just, as I say, on the fact that, but I think, yeah, certainly if members are happy, are the members happy that that should come forward? Yeah, thank you.
Good. We've formally agreed that, and the minutes will reflect that.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, but it will, yeah, it'll probably be the January meeting by looks of the calendar. I think, you know, time is disappearing rapidly as we know through the year, and I think from Mr. Small's point of view, it sounds as if January would be preferable. Yeah. So I see, yes, I'm seeing that we've got a 7th of December extra meeting for external scrutiny if required. Without having Mr. Woodhall here, I don't know what he might have had in mind with that. I'm looking at
Chairman, I don't think we've actually got anything in mind, nothing planned for external scrutiny at the moment.
Right. I don't know if members got any suggestions for, again, we're on a fairly tight time scale of getting any. There was the children's, yes, on the last page, there's the County Council Children's Services, which we have brought forward and carried forward. Members sort of feeling that that's one that, and particularly perhaps at this time when, you know, life has not been easy within that sector. Councillor Wixley, you had a comment?
Well, a couple of things actually, Chairman. I've got some ideas for outside scrutiny, but I'm sort of pondering on them at the moment, and I need to perhaps do a bit more research rather than expose them tonight, but I can forward that on, I think, to Gary and copy you in and the Vice Chairman when I've done that.
If you could, that would be useful.
Just a comment, if I may, on page 70, item 9, This is a Pearls Lane site in Loughton. It says a cabinet decision due on the 21st of June 21. I think if you look at page 57, that's been put back till the 8th of November this year. So that needs sort of tweaking, updating.
And I think that was referenced earlier on as well, that there was something certainly from the June one that was going to be picked up. Yeah, perhaps it wasn't that one. But yes, it will be picked up. Councillor Murray?
I was only going to say I'm most intrigued by Councillor Wixley's kind of things that he's thinking about and what they might be. I tend to think that if we're sitting here scratching our heads, who should we have externally, then there isn't anyone that we should have externally. The issue should almost present itself because there should be a body of public concern. I do accept that we want scrutiny before there's massive public concern, but if there isn't something that readily comes to mind, then I think the answer is we don't want to scrutinise anyone at this stage. But I would be interested in Councillor Wixley's ideas at some stage.
I think that's a very fair point, that yes, and certainly I'm conscious that an awful lot of the areas which we might be inviting for scrutiny have been struggling themselves in getting their own work covered without having to put in extra hours coming to us. Councillor Wixley, you want to come back?
Well, they're not necessarily public concern, but I think they will be of public interest.
Right, okay. We'll await and see what comes forward from you. If we can move on then to the select committees. Stronger Communities met last on the 21st of September. Unfortunately now the chairman or the vice chairman is able to be here this evening, but I did have a quick word with Councillor Murray if he could just give us a brief overview of what did go through at the last meeting.
It will be brief because it's not a criticism. When you say you had a quick word with me, it was literally just before the meeting started, which is absolutely fine. I'm not complaining. 21st of September, it was a great meeting, a useful meeting. If I just briefly explain some of the things we looked at, we had a great presentation from the community safety team, EFDC funded police officers, the 6 monthly update, and we focused on the work that they were doing and had a presentation there and asked some great questions. A wonderful presentation from the museum's collections project, and I think members were really kind of hit by the amount of stock that we've got and the really thorough way that we are rationalising that. And if I remember correctly, got an external grant to rationalise to that, and the very strict criteria we're keeping to before we actually throw anything away. We had a customer service update. I don't think I particularly want to say anything about that. And then the really key issues, and it's the initial stages, and they go out to consultation with the public and stakeholders and come back to us, as you'll see on the work plan, are all the housing areas, the review of the housing allocations policy, the review of the tenancy policy, homelessness and rough sleeping, and then the overall housing strategy review. So I don't think I need to say anything else really. The issues that we'll be looking at in March are on the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Murray. Sorry to throw that at you at the last minute, but I did think that perhaps you would be able to come and give us some at least overview. Councillor Whitehouse.
Yes, Chairman, I just wanted to comment on the agenda that we had that evening. It was a very full and interesting agenda, but the 4 items about housing, which were new policies, new strategies, where the officers really wanted to have our input, they were the last items on the agenda. It was 9 o'clock, I think, before we got to those, and therefore we felt rushed to make our comments, whereas we'd probably discussed it at more length if it had been earlier on. We spent nearly an hour on the presentation about the customers and so forth, whereas most of the stuff was in the report. We could have done that more quickly. And the museum and the other ones were really interesting, but they were presentations, whereas these ones where we could really make an input in the new strategy were at the end of the agenda. I didn't understand why it was in that order, so I just request that if we're going to have strategies and policies to comment, can either be at the beginning of the agenda so we can really feel we have time to do it justice.
Right. And I think that is perhaps a discussion between the chairman of the committee and the officers supporting. But Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just wanted to add, I shared Councillor Whitehouse's concern on the evening actually, and I had a conversation with Jennifer and the team who were there to see whether or not we should request it was considered another meeting. The judgment was in the end that we had sufficient time. I think, people could normally last until about 10 o'clock. So we felt that we did have enough time. However, I think in future I would like to see that put to the front of the agenda or indeed as a separate meeting, because it was really important. But there will be further opportunity to scrutinise and through the other committee structure of the council.
Thank you. So, Councillor Murray?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that comment. I think it's fair comment and it's obviously across the chamber. The other thing I would say is, and I do understand why it was the moment of presentation and showing the museum and so on, but perhaps a prior discreet word to the officer, no more than 5 minutes. You've given a really detailed written report, and if the museum's officer had been told, look, you've got no more than 5 minutes to give your presentation, that would have helped. I think that was the big thing. We had the detailed written report about the museum's allocation policy, and then we had a long presentation. And I think it's, okay, she took her moment, and I understand that because it can be seen as a Cinderella service, which it isn't. But I think that's one of the ways to have solved the problem. Yes, you've got 5 minutes, but it is only 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's getting a balance.
There's no point in doing that at the time of the meeting. The officer, when preparing her presentation, needs to be told that.
Yeah, no, thank you for those comments. Councillor Patel.
Sorry, Chairman, just in the officer's defence, that was the first time that she presented a report to any of the committees within the council. She was extremely nervous before she spoke, and I thought the presentation was actually excellent. She was very, very knowledgeable on what she was on her subject area, and she answered the questions that were thrown at her very robustly. But take the point on board that moving forward.
Sorry to prolong, I don't disagree with any of that, and that's why we were happy for it, but I don't think it was actually necessary, particularly when we had the housing issues.
It's a procedure thing.
Yeah.
Councillor Whitehouse.
Yeah, just to say, we had another very long report as well. I mean, we are a scrutiny committee. We want to scrutinise what's written. We can read. And it's, I think 5 minutes is a really good idea. Tell the officers they've got 5 minutes to highlight the main points and give us the time to scrutinise.
I think the message has probably been taken on board by various officers who are present here this evening, and I think it will be discussed around how to help people making it, particularly first presentation. It's always difficult.
Sorry to come back, Chairman. I think most officers would be only too happy to be told we want 5 minutes. Because, you've given us a good written report, we just want 5 minutes. Yeah, if they're around, they'd be delighted.
Thank you. Right. If we've got no other questions or comments on the Communities Select Committee, if I can move on to Councillor Bolton and the Stronger Council.
I hope to keep this brief. We had a meeting on the 14th of September. Certain things that we've discussed today, which part of our work programme includes people strategy, and I'll certainly build into a future meeting about what's happening with the induction staff on newly joining staff, and we can scrutinise how that's being done. We also every time look through agree our terms of reference. After what Councillor Lyon has said, I think we will actually, perhaps this next time, it's time, these committees have been going on for a while, to actually look at it, scrutinise our terms of reference, and not obviously change them, but analyse them and make sure that they happen. we discussed the recent elections. Some councillors felt that in some wards it hadn't worked particularly well and there were long queues, but that obviously wasn't the case throughout the district. There were comments about the count at the Northfield airfield, and comments were made that it was very cold. That comment came from a member of the Green Party, so they would obviously not want to warm it up too much, but otherwise the general consensus was that it went well, but lessons may be learnt that will obviously be discussed before next May's meetings. I think really the only other thing was the Qualis quarterly monitoring report. I will admit that a lot of this goes over my head because there's a lot of minutiae, but it seems that it's going quite well, and that the draft budget is holding its head above water, and there were no concerns there. I don't know whether Mr. Small wants to make any other comments about anything we discussed particularly.
Not for me, Chairman.
No.
I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have to say, obviously, that the local election, the whole procedure was different this year round because of the COVID restrictions, and the count obviously was totally different from where it would be normally. But yes, yeah, we weren't alone in being doing our count in an aircraft hangar. I gather South Cambridge did theirs as well, so perhaps they were a bit warmer. Councillor Murray.
Just two quick points. As the chairman has made mention of the local elections, I think there was a universal agreement, despite slightly different experiences across the district, that the staff have done a very good job under difficult circumstances. I made a detailed contribution on that issue because we did have some issues in my ward, but I'm not going to rehearse those again tonight. But there was a consensus, unanimous view that the staff have done a good job in difficult circumstances. But I am very pleased to see number 12, and I'm not just saying that because I suggested it as a non-member of the panel, or the scrutiny panel, but I do want to just bring that to all members' attention because I think there's some really big concerns around it. So they are going to receive a report on the new election legislation on voter ID, with a focus on financial implications for the council, but it isn't just the financial implications. It's a report on how that will affect the impact of the service, new election legislation on voter ID. So I'm glad to see that that's been added, Chairman.
Thank you very much for those comments. If we've got nothing else on that one, if we go on to the final one, Councillor Lyon for Stronger Places, which is a draft work programme.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this has really been put together following the last meeting we had on the 23rd, where the terms of reference were discussed and what could be included in the programme. So we've now constructed this programme, which is what I would consider to be infrastructure, which is a place issue. We did consider the branding options for the hub here at the Civic Centre, and there were various comments on that received before it went to Cabinet. I haven't seen the Cabinet review of that, but I'm assuming it went through. The next meeting is fairly full agenda. We've got PAH and Whips Cross coming along, plus waste management and various other considerations, high streets as well. So it's going to be a fairly full meeting. There is a potential for the Cabinet member for Highways to come and speak to us at some point as to what the Essex County Council position is in terms of their Highways programme. That's yet to be confirmed. And the other items are still there, subject to getting some dates in place, which we will do as soon as possible in conjunction with officers. So we've gone from a fairly sparsely populated programme to a fairly robust programme from the last meeting, and we look forward to actually seeing some of those issues being brought before the committee. I think one of the comments that was made previously by the previous committee was many of the reports that have been brought were verbal, and it was very difficult to actually scrutinise verbal reports. So we are now looking to make sure we do have written reports presented with sufficient time to consider them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking down your list. Number 7, I think, should now be removed, going on our previous discussions.
Yeah, the only thought I had on that one, it's talking about leisure infrastructure. So it's not looking at what each leisure centre is, but where they're situated across the district and how they work together. So I'm quite happy to take it out, but it was more about the infrastructure of where they are and how they actually work as individual centres across the whole of the district, rather than what facilities they actually offer.
And
so
perhaps that's something to be discussed by the next Vice Chairman's meeting. Perhaps something to discuss at the next Vice Chairman and Chairman's meeting. Councillor Rackham.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really, really pleased to see PAH and Whips Cross on there. So thanks for that. It's really good.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you all very much for your input in all of that. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground this evening. And I will close the meeting at 26 minutes past 9. Thank you very much.